It was the middle of a Saturday, the busiest hour, one of those enormous big box stores under a roof full of white light. I was there for paint samples and a birthday card for my sister, wall to wall with people, carts, kids, couples reading labels, the place humming, an announcement going off somewhere. The most crowded, ordinary, daylight place you can be. I had a list and a lukewarm coffee, and not one worried thought in my head. If you'd told me anything could go wrong between the paint and the cards, I'd have laughed in your face. I first noticed him without noticing him, the way you do. A man, a couple of aisles in, just a person, nothing about him. Ordinary clothes, no cart that I clocked. Not old, not young. He was in the aisle I was in, a little ways down, and I rounded the end and went to the next one and got what I needed. And he was in that one too, down the far end, and I still didn't think a single thing of it, because that's just a store. People are everywhere. You cross paths. But I turned into the next aisle, 3 over, a totally different part of the store, and there he was. Same distance back, same nothing expression. Not looking at any shelf, not holding anything. Just at the end of my aisle, where he had been at the end of the last one, and the one before. And the first cold little thread pulled tight in my stomach. The one that says, that's 3, that's not coincidence anymore. And here's what got under my skin the most. Standing there in all that light and noise, nobody else saw it. There were 40 people in eyeshot, and to every one of them, he was just a man in a store, and I was just a woman in a store. And the thing happening between us was completely invisible. The crowd I thought made me safe wasn't watching me at all. Everybody was looking at their own list, and he and I were alone together in the middle of all of them. I decided to test it because I had to know. I left my aisle and I walked, not casually, deliberately, all the way across the store, past the registers, past the food, to a section I had zero reason to be in. Far corner, quiet. The kind of department a man like him has no business in either. And I stood there pretending to look at something, and I counted to 30 in my head, and I told myself, if he comes around that corner, I'm not imagining this. He came around the corner. Of course he did. Into a part of the store he'd have crossed the entire building to reach, a part with nothing in it for anyone like him. And he slowed when he got there and pretended, badly, to be interested in a shelf. Facing it, but angled at me. And the bright fluorescent everything of that place suddenly felt like a stage with the lights up, and I was the only thing he'd come to see. The fear in a place like that is a strange, embarrassed thing. It's broad daylight. There are children 2 aisles over. There's a smell of rotisserie chicken. Nothing about the room gives you permission to be afraid. So you stand there with your heart going and a voice in your head saying, "Don't be dramatic. He's allowed to be in the store. What are you going to do? Scream because a man walked down an aisle?" That voice is the gap he was working in. The daylight, the crowd, the manners, all of it telling me to doubt the one true thing my body already knew. So I did the only thing I could think of. I got my phone up, low, and I turned and I looked straight at him. Not a glance, a look that let him know I'd seen him. For 1 second, we were just 2 people looking at each other across a bright aisle full of strangers. And in that second, something passed over him. Not anger, not embarrassment, recognition. The flat understanding of a man who's just realized the thing he was doing quietly isn't quiet anymore. And then he reversed. Instantly. The second he knew I'd clocked him, he turned on his heel and walked the other way. Fast, direct, away from me. Out of the section he'd crossed the whole store to reach, abandoning it like it had never mattered. And that was the thing that turned my legs to water, standing there in all that light. Because a man who's actually shopping doesn't do that. He doesn't drop his whole errand and flee the instant a stranger looks at him. The shopping had never been real. The only thing in that store he'd come for was me, and the moment I saw it, he quit.
I didn't feel relief. I felt the opposite.
Because him leaving didn't mean it was over. It meant I'd been right the whole time, and the polite voice in my head had been wrong. And I'd nearly let it talk me into ignoring a man who had spent 20 minutes shadowing me through a crowd. I stood there with my phone shaking in my hand, watching the space where he'd been, making myself memorize a back, a build, a walk. Because that, again, was all he'd ever let me have. Never a face, just the shape of him going away. I didn't finish my shopping. I left the cart where it was and I walked straight to the front, fast, out the big sliding doors into the white glare of the lot. And I sat in my locked car and watched the doors for a long time to see if he came out after me. He didn't. He stayed inside or left another way or was already gone. I'll never know, because the whole point of him was that I never got to see where he went. He'd vanished back into the crowd the second I made him visible, which is the only place a man like that can live. I reported it to the store, online, to anyone who'd hear it, and what I got back kindly was that there was nothing to be done. He hadn't touched me, he hadn't taken anything, hadn't said a word, hadn't followed me out the door. A man walked around a store and then left it. And the worst part is, I later found I wasn't the only one. Other people, other stores, the exact same thing, the exact same nothing came of it. A man who shadows you through a crowd and quits the instant you look at him never quite does the thing that makes it real to anyone but you. I still shop in the daytime. I still go to the busy places. But something in me recalibrated in that store, and it never went back. I used to think a crowd was a kind of safety, that with people everywhere, nothing could single me out. That day taught me different, so I pay a different kind of attention now. I don't trust the light or the noise to watch my back for me. After that day, I started clocking who clocks me in every bright, crowded place I've ever felt safe in. I do the books for a small company, and I notice patterns. It's most of what I'm good for. That afternoon, the only pattern was a huge shopping center lot, the kind that goes on forever. Rows and rows of cars, a bright flat sky, people coming and going at every one of them, carts rattling, trunks slamming, somebody's radio. As public and as daylight as a place gets. I'd parked way out because it was packed, and I had a fair walk back across all of it. Bags in both hands, thinking about nothing but getting home. I noticed the car the first time only because it was wrong, in a small way. A car parked in a busy lot, mid-row, with someone just sitting in it. Engine running, I could see the faint shimmer off the exhaust in the sun. But not leaving, not pulling out, not waiting on anyone loading up. Just sitting, facing out at the lane where everybody walked. And I clocked it for half a second the way you clock anything slightly off. And then I forgot it, because a man sitting in a car is the least alarming thing in the world. Except as I walked, I kept catching it at the edge of things. The same car, the head inside it turning. Not turning to me, turning to follow a woman 2 rows up who was walking to her car alone, tracking her the whole way across his windshield, the way you'd follow a bird across a yard. And when she got in and drove off, the head came back, resettled, faced the lane again, waiting for the next one. I told myself I was inventing it. You see a thing once and then your brain goes looking for it, finds patterns that aren't there. So I kept walking and I made myself not look for a whole row. And then I let myself look, and the car had moved. Not far, a few spaces down, repositioned, nose toward a different lane now, a lane where another woman was walking by herself toward the far end of the lot. and the head was already turned, already tracking her.
That's when the daylight stopped feeling like daylight.
Because this wasn't a man waiting for his wife. A man waiting for his wife watches one door. He doesn't reposition his car to keep a clean angle on whoever's walking alone, and then do it again and again. He was reading the lot, picking, sitting in the one spot in all that sun where nobody looks twice, a parked car among 1,000 parked cars, and from inside it he was choosing people. And I had just understood I was looking at it mid-choice. And I did the math I did not want to do. How long had he been there? How many had already walked past that windshield while I was still inside the store? Because this wasn't the first one I'd seen him track, it was the third that I'd caught in the few minutes I'd been crossing the lot. 3 women, one after another, all alone, all on foot, all read and followed across the glass, and then released when they drove away. An assembly line of it, running quietly in the middle of a bright Saturday, with 100 people all around who were busy with their own trunks. I want to say I did something brave. I didn't. I froze, the way you do, and I kept walking, because what is there to do? Run up to strangers loading groceries and say there's a man in a car looking at women, in a parking lot, in the daytime, where every single car has a person who could be looking at anything. It sounds like nothing said out loud. There was nothing I could point at and make anyone else see. So I did the only useful thing, which was change. I changed how I walked. I cut my path so I was never the lone one at the clean end of a lane. I tucked in behind a family heading roughly my direction, close enough to look like I was with them, putting other bodies between me and that windshield. And it worked for a while. His head didn't come to me because I'd made myself not a single woman walking alone, just part of a clump of people. And I thought, keep doing that. Get to your car. You're nearly clear. But the family turned off toward their own car, 2 rows short of mine. And then it was just me, alone, in the open, bags in both hands, the last stretch of lane between me and my car, with nobody beside me. Exactly the shape he'd been waiting for all afternoon. And I felt it the way you feel a draft. Before I even looked, I knew the head had come around. I knew without checking that I had just become the next one in the line. And the car was moving. Not fast, idling along the lane a few cars back, matching my pace at a crawl, the way a thing follows you when it isn't ready to be seen following you yet. Same car, the shimmer of exhaust, the shape in the seat now turned full toward me. All of it under a flat white sky, with shoppers 30 feet away, none of them feeling what I was feeling, because to them it was a car in a lot and a woman with bags, and to me it was the front of the line finally reaching me. And the worst thought I had wasn't even fear for myself. It was the understanding of what I'd been watching. All those other women, the ones I'd seen him track and let go, they hadn't been near misses he'd failed at. They'd been him choosing, cycling, working down a crowd until one of us lined up right. I wasn't being singled out. I was just the one whose timing put her alone in the open, at the wrong second, at the end of a line. 3 I'd caught and God knows how many before me. Strangers who never even knew they'd been in it. I stopped trying to be casual. I got my keys up between my fingers and I walked straight and fast for my car, not looking back, making my whole body say, I am not confused. I am not lost. I know exactly where I'm going and I am almost there. And the car kept pace behind me, crawling, patient, closing the lane down a little at a time, the way you ease towards something so it doesn't bolt before you're close enough. I reached my car and I had the door open and I was half in when his door opened too. A few spaces back. I didn't see a face. I saw a door swing wide and a leg come out. A man starting to stand up out of the seat, Finally getting out, after all of it, now that the lane was empty, and I was the one. And I did not wait to find out the rest. I threw myself in, slammed it, hit the lock, and the chunk of that lock was the loudest, best sound of my life. And I had the engine going before I'd even got my seatbelt, both hands shaking on the wheel. And then I just watched, in my mirror, heart slamming, ready to drive over a curb if I had to. He stood there a second by his open door, reading it, the way he'd read the whole lot all afternoon. Seeing that this one was sealed in metal now, engine running, no longer alone, no longer the easy end of a lane. And then, calm, unbothered, like none of it had cost him anything, he got back in, shut the door, and the car simply pulled out of the row and rolled off toward the exit, in no hurry at all. I sat there until I could trust my hands, and I watched the lot keep going around me. People loading trunks, carts rattling back to the rack, a kid dropping a juice box. Nobody had seen any of it. The car was gone, into the same daylight traffic as everyone else. No plate I'd kept, no face I'd ever had, nothing to give anyone, and the lot just closed back over the empty space where it had been, the way water closes over a stone, like the whole afternoon's hunting had never happened at all. I never found out who he was, and I never will. He didn't break a window or grab a wrist. He sat in a car in the sun and worked a crowd, and then he drove home. That's the part I carry. Not that he came for me, but that I'd watched him come for the ones ahead of me first, in broad daylight in a full lot, and it had been completely invisible to everyone but me. So now I don't just watch the people walking, I read the parked cars, the idling ones, the ones with a head that turns to follow whoever's alone. People think it's a lot to look at a thing like that twice. They didn't watch the line I watched. I run before my shift, nurse, 12 hours on my feet after, so the morning miles are mine. My route is the brightest, most crowded path in the city, a wide waterfront trail, water one side, city the other, and at 11 it is packed. Runners, dog walkers, strollers, tourists on their lunch, all under a flat, high sun. I'd run it 100 times. You pick it because you're never alone on it. Always people. That was the point. That was supposed to be the thing that kept it safe. It was a perfect day for it. Hard light off the water, the path bright and busy, my music going, my legs feeling good. I wasn't scanning for anything because there was nothing to scan for. It was a public trail at the busiest hour, in full daylight, with a crowd in every direction. You don't run that path on alert. You run it loose, easy, half checked out, one more body in a river of bodies, all of us out enjoying the most ordinary, safe thing there is. Up ahead, off to the side of the path, there was a man. And here is the thing I keep coming back to. I read him instantly, and I read him as safe, because he was dressed for work. The vest, the boots, the whole look of a man who was there to do a job on the waterfront. The kind of figure that's just part of the furniture of a city path in the daytime. You see them everywhere. Crews, maintenance, somebody fixing something. My brain filed him in half a second under belongs here, and then it stopped looking at him entirely. The way you stop seeing a cone or a sign or a parked truck. And that's the part that still makes me cold. Not that I didn't notice him, that I did notice him fully, and the noticing made me less careful, not more. A man just standing on a busy path you might clock. A man in a work vest you wave right past because the costume answers the question before you ask it. And he wasn't even working, no tool, not bent to a task, just standing near the edge. But the vest did its job on my eyes, so I read the stillness as a man on a break. One of 100 forgettable shapes on a crowded trail. and so I ran straight at him without a flicker of the thing that should have been firing. There were people everywhere. A couple jogging the other way, maybe 30 feet off, a man with a dog, a stroller, people on benches. It was not a lonely stretch. There is no lonely stretch on that trail at that hour. If you had asked me to point at the safest place in my whole week, I'd have pointed right there. Bright, open, crowded, midday, water and city and 100 witnesses. I was as surrounded by people as I ever am, and it changed nothing about what happened next. I drew level with him, close, the arm's length you pass anyone at on a narrowish path. And for a fraction of a second, I felt him turn, not away, the way a working man turns back to his work, but toward, squaring. And there was a flicker of something then, way too late, some animal part of me going, wait, that's not... But I was already there, already beside him, already inside the reach of a man I'd spent the last 100 yards deciding was furniture.
And he moved, fast, faster than a man at rest should be able to move. No wind-up, no warning. Not a lunge from the bushes, not a shout, nothing that would have triggered a single head to turn before it happened. 1 second he was scenery, the next his weight came off that spot and across the path at me, and the part of the day that had been bright and easy and full of people narrowed down to him and me in the 2 feet between us, closing. And to everyone else, for that first instant, it didn't look like anything. A worker and a runner close together on a path. No one watching had any reason to read it as wrong, because the vest told them what they were seeing was normal, the same way it had told me. Not one head turned. They looked right at it and saw a man at his job. And in that last beat before he reached me, it came apart in my head all at once. The stillness, the way he hadn't been working, the way he'd squared up as I came level instead of standing aside. There was no job. There never had been. Just a man at the edge of the busiest path in the city, standing where everyone could see him, and no one would, waiting for one of us to come close enough. I'd love to tell you I reacted in that beat. I didn't. There was no beat. The understanding and the grab happened in the same half second, so close together I can't separate them even now. The realization that he wasn't a worker and the feeling of his hand are the same memory. I had no time to dodge, no time to shout first, no time to do any of the things you promise yourself you'd do. He had built the whole thing so that by the time it stopped looking safe, it was already happening. His hand closed on my arm, hard, a full grip, fingers right around it, and his other hand grabbed a fistful of my shirt at the shoulder, and he pulled sharp and strong off the path toward the brush at the edge, trying to take me off my feet and out of the open in one motion. In broad daylight, on a packed trail, with people 30 feet away, a hand on my arm and a fist in my clothes, and the whole world yanking sideways, and the bright water and the bright sky swinging as he hauled, and not one part of my run still belonged to me. So I did the only thing left, which was come apart in the opposite direction. I didn't stop moving. That's the thing I got right, the only thing. I threw all of my momentum away from him and I screamed. A real scream, the kind that empties you out. No, get off, no! Tearing my arm down and back through his grip, feeling my shirt go, feeling skin go, not fighting him so much as refusing to let my feet leave the ground, staggering half down, but still going, still forward, still on the path, still in the light where he didn't want me. And the scream did what his costume had stopped the crowd from doing. It turned every head at once. Suddenly the joggers were stopping, the man with the dog was turning, faces coming around all down the path, the whole invisible thing made loud and visible in one sound. And the instant it was visible,
The instant he wasn't a worker anymore, but a man with his hands on a screaming woman in front of witnesses, he let go. Dropped me, the shirt, all of it. Because the only thing that had ever made him safe was nobody seeing it for what it was. And now everybody was. He didn't run down the path. He didn't go through the crowd, into the witnesses, the way a desperate man might. He turned and went straight off the edge, into the bushes, the green tangle along the water. 3 steps and gone, swallowed, the way the vest had let him be part of the scenery one minute, and the way the brush let him stop being there the next. No chase he'd lose, no faces he'd give. Just there, and then a runner staggering on the path holding her arm, and an empty stretch of bushes still moving where he'd gone through. People were good to me after. Strangers stopped, asked, walked me, called it in. But there was nothing to give anyone. A vest, a build, a direction into the brush. No face. I'd been close enough to be grabbed, and I still never had his face, because for the whole approach, my eyes had been busy filing him under harmless. No one found him. No one I ever heard of. He went into the bushes off the brightest path in the city at the busiest hour, and as far as the world is concerned, he was never there at all. I run again now. It took a while, but I do. And the thing that changed isn't that I'm afraid of the dark, or empty places, or being alone. I always knew to watch those. What that morning took from me was the daylight. The belief that a crowd is a wall around you, that the sun and the witnesses in the busy, ordinary world will stand between you and the worst thing. They won't. The worst thing knows exactly how to dress, so a crowd waves it right past. So I don't hand my safety to the daylight anymore. I watch the people who belong, the same as the ones who don't. It's a smaller, warier way to move through a bright morning. It's also why I got my arm back, and my run back, and the rest of my life to be careful with. And let's never meet. 3 crowds. A man on every aisle of a packed store who quit the second I looked at him. A man in a parked car in a full lot, working strangers one at a time in the sun while everyone loaded their trunks. And a man in a work vest on a crowded path at noon who I never feared until his hand was on my arm. None of them needed the dark. Every one of them used the bright, busy, ordinary day, and the 100 people who were right there and never saw a thing. So before you close the tab, ask yourself the quiet question. Of those 3, the one who shadows you through a crowd, the one who reads the lot from a parked car, the one who's dressed to belong, which would you have waved right past because the sun was up and you weren't alone? Tell me in the comments. Subscribe so the next one reaches you before you have to learn it the way I did. And the next bright, crowded day you feel safe in, think of the man who hunted a whole lot without ever leaving his car, and look twice at the ones just sitting there.